What's up, Tailgaters? You're in the booth with Tailgate Nate today. The road to predict all 136 FBS level college football teams this summer is now in Fort Collins, Colorado. We're back in the Mountain West, and we're going to be talking about the Colorado State Rams, a really good team out of the Mountain West last year, but undergoing a lot of change. Can they stay in conference title contention? My name is Nate Bope, otherwise known as Tailgate Nate. Thank you all so much for clicking on this video and for helping to support the channel. If you want to support the channel even further, many ways you can do that, but the biggest one, go down below, hit that subscribe button, and while you're at it, you might as well ring the bell. Turning on notifications will ensure that you don't miss an upload during prediction season, especially when it's your favorite team, if I haven't done them already. I am a sports media graduate delving into the professional world of the sports media industry, and if all of you would like to see the cool stuff I get to do while still being up to date on what goes on this very YouTube channel, then please give me a follow at TailgateNate29 on Twitter, Instagram, and feel free to email me, tailgatenate29@gmail.com. Thank you all so much for supporting and interacting with me and the channel in whatever way you may be doing so. With all that said and done and out of the way, let's talk about Jay Norvell and the Colorado State Rams. And ever since Jay Norvell has gotten to Fort Collins from Nevada, he has taken this program in the right direction. I think 3-9 his first year, then went 5-7 last year, 8-4. And sure, while there might be a little bit of a drop-off expected, this very much so is a Colorado State team that has got a lot of nice pieces, even some really good returners, and it's still projected to be one of the better sides that the Mountain West Conference sees this year. Hey, how do we do preview predictions here on the channel? Well, we are going to go through a roster overview where the offense is going to be, pointing the wrong way, over here to the left, while the defense is here to the right. Offense left, defense right. End of the video, we do go through the Colorado State football schedule. I will give it a game-by-game preview and prediction, and overall, this video is here to tell all of you what I think about the Rams here in 2025. Now, before we get started, bam, some numbers right down below me are returning production numbers. They are according to ESPN, and they factor in portal additions up to a certain percentage. What's more is your recruiting and transfer portal ranks for the class of 2025 are both according to 24/7 Sports. As far as your offensive coaching staff goes, there is no true offensive or co-offensive coordinator that I can find, but you do have a pass game coordinator and a run game coordinator on staff. Let's start diving on in to the talent. Braden Fowler Nicolosi, a name that has been here with this Colorado State program for quite some years, going into his redshirt junior year. It honestly probably feels like he's been there a lot longer than he actually has been, but Fowler Nicolosi, 2,796 yards, 14 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. You're going to see him return for Colorado State this season. Maybe not as good of a year as he had in 2023. He also did not throw the volume that he did in 2023. In fact, he threw 90 less passes. Attempted 90 less passes than he did, or I should say from 2023 on to 2024. And you inevitably we're going to see some of those numbers dip. The number that was really good that dipped was the interception number. But you need more than 14 touchdowns, especially with some of the wide receivers that you have here in a conference like the Mountain West. I think Braden Fowler Nicolosi has shown us things over the past couple of seasons that can make him overall a really, really dangerous threat when he puts it all together. I think this is the guy that's got some really high upside, and I want to see some more from him. Now, Fowler Nicolosi, to my knowledge, not the guy that gets outside of the pocket and runs a whole lot. However, did have 4 rushing touchdowns last year and had a long of 23. So he started to work it into his game when he absolutely has to. But sit back, pass. He fixed the interception problem last year. Even though he threw 90 less passes, he almost halved his interception number, which is pretty darn good. But that touchdown number needs to increase. The yardage is there. The touchdowns need to get there. And I think this is the Colorado State offense that, if that happens, can definitely take a step up this season. As far as your running back room goes, well, your lead running back in Avery Morrow is going to be gone. A 1,000-yard rusher last year, had 6 yards over that number, with a team-high 9 touchdowns a season ago on the ground and 5.5 yards per carry. So you are going to be getting back Justin Marshall, who was the number 2 option in the running back room last year. Still, very good season for Marshall. 746 yards and 4 touchdowns on 4.8 yards per carry. Sure, the yards per carry number wasn't as good as Morrow, but Avery Morrow was a really, really good talent. And there are a lot of portal pieces that are going to come in to sort of replace a lot of the depth that you did lose. Now, Jalen Dupree does also come back. He was the 3rd leading rusher and the only other guy that got over 100 yards rushing for the team last season, but he's projected to be behind, again, a couple of transfers. You're going to get Van Shield, who's coming over from Northern Colorado and was at Colorado State previously and has since transferred back, and then Lloyd Avant, who is coming over from Tulsa. He had 259 yards and a touchdown a season ago. Only 3.4 yards per carry, however, but he provides a lot of really good talent. And I think the upside for him is pretty high as a true sophomore. That was just his freshman season at Tulsa last year. As far as the wide receiver room goes, well, you are going to be taking some big hits here, most notably, though, in the likes of Torrey Horton. Your top 2 wide receivers are also gone. Horton was 3rd on that list, but albeit was probably the most talented wide receiver in this wide receiver room a season ago. So much so that he is now with the NFL's Seattle Seahawks. He had a monster 2023, and or I should say had a monster 2022 and 2023, where he posted 1,000-yard seasons each of those 2 years. And when you go back and take a look at last year, yeah, overall statistically it wasn't his best, but I do believe there were some injury problems with Torrey Horton, as after the San Jose State game, did not play a single snap. Went off for 9 catches, 158 yards, and a touchdown. So the stats are a little deflated as far as the full season goes. Only got into 5 games. Again, injury problems and stuff happen there. But he's a really, really good player that's going to be missed greatly in this wide receiver room. And then again, as I said, your other 2 top targets are going to be gone from last season. Their names are Caleb Goody, who led the way with 436 yards and a team-high 4 touchdowns, and Jamari Person, gone as well. Armani Winfield was the 4th leading receiver. You're going to see him return to probably be one of, if not that lead target. And there's a lot of young talent coming back. Jordan Ross, Tommy Maher are both true sophomores that are expected to play more slot roles. And then Levon Brown is a redshirt sophomore. Well, you bring in some experience through the transfer portal. Kojo Antwi is an Ohio State transfer, and you know that they don't just recruit anyone to play wide receiver at Ohio State. So I think he's going to be pretty good. And then Tay Lanier is coming over as well from Northern Arizona. So you got some good transfers over there. And as far as the tight end room goes, well, it is going to be portal built with one of the best names in college football in Rocky Beers, who is coming over from Florida Atlantic, was also formerly with the Air Force Academy as well. Carlos Anaya is coming over from Wofford. And those are the 2 transfers there. You have some other redshirt sophomores that sit back in the room, but I don't believe they're going to be getting much time this season. As far as your offensive line goes, you're going to need 3 roles that will be, or I should say, that are needed to be filled on the O-line unit. However, portal pieces, I think, are going to help out drastically, especially William Wortman, who's probably going to slot in and play left tackle for you this year. Other than that, though, you have a good mix of veteran leadership with some really good young talent, especially that veteran leadership coming at the center position with Trevin Heel. Or Hale, however you pronounce that last name. Apologies for mispronunciations. So overall, when I take a look at this offense, I think you lost a really talented running back and a really talented wide receiver. Okay, I think if Braden Fowler-Nicolosi can really put the whole package together on a consistent basis this year, I think he's got the good wide receiver pieces. I still like Justin Marshall, and honestly, a lot of the transfers that they did bring in, and I still think this is the Colorado State offense that, while it might not be as dynamic, or I should say have as dynamic potential as it did last season, I think you're going to still see it have some pretty good success. Now, when you move on over and talk about Tyson Summers with this Ram defense, the defense can see some improvement, but it has got to, especially if you're going to improve one thing from last season, get better at creating pressure up front. The secondary was statistically magnificent. Maybe not fully in terms of passing yards per game allowed, but they had They had 59 passes defended and 10 interceptions a season ago. I know the 10 interception number is not super crazy. Now, the defensive front did force 13 fumbles and they recovered 11 of them, but only 17 sacks. That has got to get kicked in the right direction, especially when you're going to be losing your sack leader from last season. Gabe Kirschke, who had 6.5 sacks last year, has often transferred to play for the Wake Forest Demon Deacons. On top of those 6.5 sacks, had 42 tackles last year to go along with 2 pass defended, and why not a defensive lineman interception? You're going to lose a ton of D-line depth as well as all of those, and that should say is a goner, not just goner. So whatever. Still works, kind of. You are going to get some experience that comes back in this room, however. But overall, the portal pieces are really going to end up highlighting this defensive line this year. Edge rusher Paul Tangelo is going to come over from Stephen F. Austin. You bring in an FCS guy there. Nose tackles, a young transfer from New Mexico State, and Gabe Jones, who had 16 tackles last year. And then you're going to get Jaquez Evans over from Baylor. So there's a P4 guy that's going to slot into a starting role on the exterior of the defensive line for you. Yeah, you still have some good young pieces, but some good senior pieces will at very least provide some depth. As far as your linebacking core goes, well, your top 2 linebackers are gone. Your lead tackler in Boam Jock is gone. He had 100 tackles a season ago to go along with an interception and 3 passes defended. Also recovered 2 fumbles for the team last year. And then Chase Wilson, that second leading tackler. Yep, he is also good as gone. 98 tackles, as well as 2 interceptions, and also recovered a fumble for the team last season. This absolutely are 2 linebackers that are huge pieces. They were massive on this defense last year. They controlled the flow defensively for this team, and those are just going to be some really substantial losses. However, you do get a pretty solid guy coming back into this defense, as well as Jacob Ellis, who is a transfer coming in. Owen Long is a good young piece that returns. Same thing with Drew Rodriguez, and you can even include some of the edge rushers in this as well. But Jacob Ellis is going to slot into probably play that Mike position. He had 41 tackles and 4.5 tackles for loss at Iowa State last year. So the Power 4 guy is coming over here after really putting up some solid numbers. I think he's going to be a great transfer, and the room may not overall be as good as it was last year, but I think Jacob Ellis is going to do a great job to lead this unit and has some pretty solid pieces to work with behind him. As far as your defensive backs, I told you they were pretty darn solid a year ago. Well, you do lose a lot of that production from last season as well. However, still some, again, solid pieces coming back, especially a graduate student in the nickelback room in Aiden Hector. While you don't return any super productive piece from the secondary last year, again, much like a lot of this defense, you're returning some really good young talent. Jet Vincent, Dylan Phelps are going to be a safety and corner for you this season. Some good young depth, but you get your experience, like most other position groupings on this team has, through the transfer portal. Jahari Rogers is over from SMU and a former Florida Gator. He had 19 tackles in 2023. You also get a name that I will butcher over from Holy Cross, and Jake Jarmilowick. Hopefully, again, said that last name right. He's a good transfer that'll slot in at that free safety position. Again, transfers are going to help revamp this unit a little bit, but really overall, when you look throughout this team, yes, there can be some good experience coming back. Braden Fowler-Nicolosi is one of those guys who's been the starter over the past couple of seasons, but overall, it's a pretty young team that just sees good experience enter through the transfer portal, which is, I think, a very good thing for this unit. As far as your special teams room, completely revamped, and you get one of each side of the coin. You get an experience. Oh, I'm on the wrong thing there. So scratch what I was about to say. Well, honestly, don't. You actually do get a fairly experienced punter returning in Brian Hansen that's going to be the lead role, and then Payne Williams as your place kicker is a redshirt freshman. So there is your special teams report. And now, overall about Colorado State. Again, just expanding on my previous thought, this is the team with a lot of young talent that's getting experience in through the transfer portal, and I do believe that this is a Colorado State team that's going to have a lot of their transfer pieces fit. I think they hit it out of the park getting Jacob Ellis. How rare is it to see a guy that produced really well at the Power 4 level not try his luck at another Power 4 school. He decided to come here to the Mountain West. I think that's a home run pickup, and I think a lot of the experience in the transfer portal is really going to help this team along, both offensively and defensively. I won't make the same mistake I did this morning where my camera was still in the middle of the screen. So I've moved it back over here, and you take a look now at the 2025 Colorado State football schedule. But before we dive on into this, if you look down below me, these are odds courtesy of FanDuel. No, not me telling you to go place your money. It just does provide some nice and good context to how good the odds makers think Colorado State is going to be this season. And honestly, they think Colorado State's going to be pretty solid. 6.5 is that over-under win total. They're around the higher end to get into the college football playoff, in which I agree. Again, you do lose a lot of good talent from last year. Might take a lot to especially get past some of the other teams you're going to see in the Mountain West this season. Plus 1,900 odds to win the conference. I believe that sits you in the top half of the Mountain West, and with the conference set to revamp next year with a bunch of new teams. We'll see what Colorado State does this year in 2025. You got to go on the road and play Washington in week 1, and I don't think that's going to go well for you. I think Washington has the potential to be a really dangerous team out of the Big Ten Conference. Demon Williams, I like a lot at the quarterback position. I think Jonah Coleman could be one of the better running backs in the entire country. Wide receiver, I think, is being really underrated, and I like the transfer coming over with Omari Evans. Lots of good defensive transfer pieces there as well. And this is a Washington team that really does have some interesting schedule games. I know they get Ohio State at home and some other really tricky matchups that they honestly have a good shot to be able to pull off some of the upsets in those. I think they're a sleeper team in the Big Ten. Watch out for them. And I think Colorado State goes on the road and loses their first game, but they quickly bounce back, and I think they're going to beat Northern Colorado at home, no problem. Now, honestly, not a bad place for a bye week. I probably would have liked to have it maybe a week or two later, but you do get an extra week of preparation for a really, really tricky UTSA team. Now, the Roadrunners were not up to standard under Jeff Traylor last year. They went 6-6 in the regular season, which is just not the standard that has been set, as I just said a moment ago. However, I think Owen McCown at quarterback is going to take a nice step in the right direction. I think they have some really good skill position players, especially DeCorian Clark. If he's going to come back and be healthy, he's the best wide receiver in this room and one of the best wide receivers in the American Conference. Defensively, I think they got playmakers all over the field, especially getting some guys in through the transfer portal, and I really don't expect this UTSA team to have anywhere near as horrible of a season as they did last year. Again, that's compared to relative expectations that's been set by the coaching staff over the past couple of years. It means they've done a phenomenal job, and I think UTSA is in for a bounce back season. They go on the road and they beat Colorado State. You get this home game against Washington State here, and I think you're going to struggle with the Cougars. I really do think that you're going to end up losing this game here. I think Washington State is a team that I know they lose John Mateer. Obviously, that's the big name that everyone knows that they've lost, but they lost some good running back pieces, such as their leading rusher in Wayshawn Parker. You did lose some really good wide receiver pieces, as well as some good defensive units. However, I think Jimmy Rogers is a guy that is going to be able to get his system implemented. And look, I mean, if Zevi Eckhouse is a guy that can translate what he was doing at Bryant at the FCS level, now sitting in the program for a minute, albeit it's going to be under new management. However, I quite like that management in Jimmy Rogers, especially after the success he had at South Dakota State. I think he's going to end up being I actually really think he's going to end up being a pretty darn good head coach at the FBS level. I think he's going to lead Washington State to surprise a fair bit of people this year. I like a lot of the transfers that they did get in, especially all of the depth, at very least depth pieces, a lot of starters too, they brought in defensively. Now you dive on into Mountain West play. You are back to an 8-game slate this season, as the agreement with Washington State and Oregon State did not extend into this season. So you're back to an 8-game schedule where you first have to go on the road and play a San Diego State team that I honestly liked a whole lot when Sean Lewis first came in. I had some really high expectations. I thought San Diego State, my apologies, was still going to continue to be quite the good team, and they just have not performed up to standard. 3-9 last season, a really really big struggle. And look, they're trying to revamp a lot of pieces. Jaden Denegal is going to be a new transfer quarterback. They got some new transfer skill position pieces. And the defense, it's still trying to build, and you did get some pieces in for depth. It's got some good talent already here, especially as it comes to upperclassmen and experience. But guys, I'm just not really feeling San Diego State lately. I think they're going to get better. I absolutely think they're going to get better this season. But for a team in Colorado State that I think is probably at this point better coached, I understand it's in Snapdragon Stadium and that place can get loud. Okay, fine. I think Colorado State's the more talented team right now, and I think they're going to go on the road and get that win. And I predict that that win is going to start quite the hot streak for Colorado State here, and it even could start a week before when they beat Washington State, if they can beat Washington State, which obviously I don't project happening. But again, I think Colorado State gets hot from here. I think they get Fresno State back at home. You just got a win on the road against the San Diego State team that might not prove to be the best, but albeit I do think is going to improve this year. And then you get a Fresno State team under Matt Entz. We just talked about how Jimmy Rogers from South Dakota State is going over to Washington State. Well, now from North Dakota State, Matt Entz is over with Fresno State. We all know how good the Bison have been over the past couple of seasons. E.J. Warner's going to come in and play quarterback for them now. He's got really high upside as the son of NFL and Super Bowl legend Kurt Warner, as well as some really good returning pieces such as Corey Foreman on defense, as well as the likes of Josiah Freeman in the wide receiver room. So you do have a lot of really good talent. Again, overall, I just like some of the pieces that Colorado State has. And I think especially if that secondary can keep up the intensity they had last year, E.J. Warner's been turnover prone throughout his career. That could sink the Bulldogs in this game. You get the Hawaii Rainbow Warriors at home next, and I don't think you're going to have much trouble here, but I do really like what Timmy Chang and the Rainbow Warriors have done over the past couple of seasons. They are continuing to build and build and build this close to a bowl game last season, albeit you have to replace some pieces. A new quarterback is going to be starting for you. You do have some new defensive pieces that will slot into the mix. And I think Hawaii is going to be a solid team as they finally are now going to get back to that stage where they're competing to be in a bowl game spot every year, much like they were last year. But I overall don't see Hawaii competing with the likes of Colorado State. Same sort of thing with Wyoming, even though this is a road game, and the fans in Laramie are awesome, by the way. That might be one of the most underrated fan bases in all of college football. This is a Wyoming team that I think is trying to figure out their identity and try to figure out what it is they exactly want to be under Jay Sawvell. Now, I think Jay Sawvell can get Wyoming there eventually. This season might just be another stepping stone. And so Colorado State now extends this win streak to 4 games. They are 2 games above 500, and they get UNLV coming up here next. This is a Rebels team that I know is revamping absolutely everything. I mean, absolutely everything. However, this is absolutely a Rebel side that can get back to a Mountain West championship game, is still really, really talented, and now you're bringing in a coach in Dan Mullen that, guys, really was not that bad at the SEC level. I know people are going to say what they want, and the flame out for Dan Mullen was huge. I'm sure a lot of you remember that at Florida, but this is still a coach I think is very well capable, is an absolutely amazing coaching talent, a very, very smart football mind, and I think is going to lead UNLV to have a pretty good season. And I just told you sitting right here, I think UNLV is the more talented team. I think they're probably the second best team in the Mountain West Conference, and Colorado State also has to play the best team in the conference this year. But I also, again, think Colorado State's in the midst of a hot streak, and they do have a lot of pieces that can give UNLV trouble. I think, again, if Braden Fowler-Nicolosi turns it on for a game, he can give any secondary trouble, and albeit there are some good pieces that transfer into this secondary, UNLV is going to be a really hard team to beat. I think Colorado State can do it. I definitely think that this is a Rams team that is well equipped to be able to do it. I think they're going to get a big win somewhere this season. I don't necessarily foresee it being Washington, and I don't see it being later in the season, but hey, you get UTSA Washington State at home. You also get UNLV at home. I think they're going to get at least one of those, and UNLV just so happens to be the game I think they're winning, and the win streak continues when you go on the road and beat New Mexico. Not much trouble there for a Lobo program that also lost a lot of pieces from last season. However, this win streak, I think, is going to come to an end. You have to go on the road to play Boise State. Did a little foreshadowing for you earlier. I think this is the most talented team, probably in the group of 5 level. Yes, I know Ashton Genty is gone. especially some wide receiver pieces. You take a look at the defensive side. Yes, they do lose talent. Maddox Matson is there. Start to learn the name of Sire Gaines. I don't think he's going to be as good as Genty. I just don't think that's possible. Genty was generational, but I think he's going to be a really good running back, and you still got solid wide receiver pieces in that room. The secondary is going to be one of, if not the best in the Mountain West with all it returns, and Boise State, no reason to think that they are not the G5 frontrunner right now. And then this game against Air Force, just a really tricky one that I end up having you lose. A little bit of a slide to end the season. I think Air Force is going to have a nice bounce back season and definitely at least get back into a bowl game under Troy Calhoun. Maybe they don't have the absolute resurgence and they're pumping out 8 wins, 9 wins, maybe around 6 or 7, but I think they are going to get better with some more returning talent. And especially with the style of football that they play, if Air Force has got your number one day, you could say this with all the Armed Forces programs. So when Air Force has your number, well, they're not going to let go of that win. So I project a little slide at the end of the season, but 7-5 overall, and you go 6-2 in conference play. Really not bad at all. And that record, depending on some of the other chaos here, might be good enough to get you into the conference championship game. I do believe that this is the Colorado State team that is very well equipped to get into the conference championship game. And especially if that win against UNLV happens, guys, I think Colorado State's looking at themselves getting into a Mountain West Conference championship game. I mean, really, that's going to be a big one in terms of a tie-breaking standpoint. I already told you I think UNLV is more talented. But man, with that record that I'm projecting down there, I think Colorado State really well equips themselves to try to challenge for a Mountain West championship. And even though the offense might not be as explosive, maybe they're going to lose an extra game that I'm not forecasting. Maybe it is this one against UNLV. Who knows? I still think this is the Colorado State team that even though the record is worse, they'll continue to trend in the right direction under Jay Norvell. But let me know what you guys think about the Rams in the comment section below. Remember to play hard but tailgate harder. See you tomorrow with a 3-video day. Goodbye.